So, we will call the meeting to order. First and foremost, I need a completion and acceptance of the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Commissioner, seconded by Commissioner Collier. All those in favor? Thank you. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? Seeing none. We now need to approve the minutes from the previous meetings. So I need a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the February 26, 2025 meeting. Moved by Commissioner Collier, seconded by Commissioner Rin. Thank you. All those in favor? Great. We have no presentations or delegations or communications today. So we're going to move straight on to staff reports. On to report number 1, over to Mr. Gregor with respect to the recast for 2025 operating budget.
Thank you. Staff report number 1 provides the recasting details for the operating budget for 2025 programs for both the conventional and specialized transit services. Summarized in the report is the process to date regarding the setting of the final 2025 operating budget programs, noting that the level for 2025 was initially set during the 2024 to 2027 multi-year budget process in 2023, and then presented and approved as a standalone budget last August to the Commission, with the final presentation the result of any material updates or recasting that we refer to. Key changes to the conventional operating budget center around the update to transportation revenue as a result of the updates to the student assumptions within the Mission Pass program. This update, along with a couple other adjustments, required that also required known contractual updates. Has resulted in a potential reserve contribution required to balance the budget for 25. There were no material updates required to the specialized operating budget at this time, and we will continue to monitor the operating budget performance, report to the Commission on a monthly basis. With that, please answer any questions.
Okay, so before we do that, I need a mover and a seconder on the recommendation and the discussion. Player, seconded by Councilor Approval. Thank you. Okay, any discussion on that report?
Sorry, Chair, just that. I have a question. Last year we had a $1.5 million surplus. That was mainly for surplus in terms of the savings, which was reflected in the City of London year-end update. And if I remember correctly, it had to do with the tuition with the students. But we projected it in the multi-year budget for all 4 years, correct? We just didn't do it for 1 year. So now, if we are looking at I think the number was 600,000 roughly. So it was my assumption, right, that it's actually based on that, it will be kind of 2.1 million, because 1.5, if we did it every single year plus 600, so it would be 2.1. And is the 2.1 reflecting all in the students? Is my assumption is correct? If you carry the 1.5,
I think I know where you're going, and no. So essentially, what happened with the 2025 that originally went to council, we had built in the multi-year budget the assumption that the enrollment at Fanshawe and Western would decline due to the capping on foreign students. And we assumed that would happen beginning in 2025 when we did that multi-year budget. What we realized as we were preparing the budget and in discussions was that the September enrollment in 2024, which flows through all the way to August of 2025, because that's the school year, they hadn't seen that decline. So we adjusted the 2025 budget up with revenue because the enrollment numbers stayed high. And we said to the city, we've got an extra, whatever it was, 1.6, 1.5 million, because those numbers stayed higher than what we had anticipated. What Mike is saying now in this report is that 1.5 estimate probably, or 1.6 estimate should have been 1 million, because now we're 600,000 short. So we shouldn't have given back city the whole 1.6. It should have only been 1 million. But again, it was based on our guess at the best time. But again, because the way the school year is different than the fiscal year, we'll be in that same position in 2026. And we are, if you've seen the headlines, we are expecting enrollment to continue to decline. So those numbers will go down again. We were very clear with council when we gave that money back in 2025 that was a one-time, and we anticipated that we'd be looking for that money back in 2026 because those numbers, could decline going forward, and we do anticipate that they will. So in all likelihood, that one-time savings that we provided in 2025 will not be there for 2026.
And it's going forward and based on this, based on what you just stated. Going forward, are we looking into going back to the city for adjustment? Or are we planning to do what we are doing now, kind of tap first into the reserve, our reserve funds?
Well, so essentially, if we say that the decline was as we predicted in the original multi-year budget, there'd be nothing to go back to the city for, because we would be at what we originally asked for. Now, obviously, we'll be dealing with that request to find the 1.5% reductions in city funding that we know is coming. That will be a different case scenario, but all things being equal, the 2026 already assumed that we were going to lose that ridership. So it's not like we're starting in a hole, but we also aren't going to have that surplus that we were able to provide in 2025.
No, thank you.
Makes
More
sense?
questions? And again, the explanation, Mike, where you saved a lot of questions because not just this report, there are two following ones as well. So thank you for those detailed explanations.
To the chair, question with respect to carbon tax and potential relief. I know we've got a bit of relief actually forecast with respect to our fuel cost. Do we have any direction from CUDA as to our transit agencies going to be treated as an emitter and required to pay fuel tax, versus a consumer? Or are, just because it's fuel and we aren't a big emitter per se in terms of industry, do we think that we're gonna have a carve out? I'm just wondering, just given the fact, we're in the middle of election, I know a lot of stuff is actually, still gonna happen, if we've actually maybe banked enough cushion there in terms of what our upside risk or downside risk might be.
Through the chair, since discussions on carbon tax have been around, CUDA, Opta have all been lobbying for exemptions from transit, because transit is essentially green. It's one of the green options, so why would you penalize that green option? We did, as an industry, do some studies, and unfortunately, if you look like on a fleet basis, if we looked here in the City of London on a fleet basis, transit would be the biggest emitter because we're the biggest fleet. So, we've certainly had those discussions and we've done those
But
studies.
not still no.
No, but also you look at the facilities, right? And transit facilities are generally big.
Yeah.
And so all of that goes into that calculation, but we certainly have, continued to work with staff at both provincial, federal levels with respect to looking for exemptions and ensuring that you're not penalizing, what is a very green alternative in this grand scheme. So we haven't seen those exemptions, but it is something that we continue to lobby.
And I know that we've got some cushion, when we talk about reserve funds and 2 reports from now, but okay, I just wanted to know if we had any direction whatsoever in terms of, because I've really not been paying attention to the federal election, just because I just came out with one and I'm a little phobic right now, so.
Other comments or questions for Mr. Greco before I call the question? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, on the recommendation? Okay, so thank you very much. Back to Mr. Gardner for staff report number 2, the recosted 2025 capital budget program.
Thank you. Staff report number 2 provides the recasted details for the Commission's 2025 capital budget program, including those items in the program approved last August, carry forward items from 2024, and any material update for required to either 2024 and 25 updates. The necessary updates are related to the 24 and 25 bus replacement programs, specifically related to the updated bus prices and the cost of ancillary equipment. We will continue to monitor this report and report to the Commission on a monthly basis. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, okay, so we need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. We'll go to discussion. Moved by Commissioner Ritz, seconded by Commissioner Collier. Thank you. Any discussion? Councilor Crable.
So Chair, the staff, so we made a call last week because of the delayed delivery or manufacturing of the buses. We made the decision to do the 2 years at once, so we have them. What is in terms of the number of the buses and the deadlines? Do we have any additional delays, or are the 24, when is that going to be fulfilled?
Through the chair, I think Greg can best speak to the timing of that. The total is 34 buses, 17 of each program.
So through the chair, there's 34 buses coming. 4 of those are articulating buses. First bus, number 653, is shipped out today. It'll be here Friday morning. I didn't get a chance to tell you today on that, sorry. That bus will be coming, then there'll be a delay in buses. The 40 footers are going back offline for whatever reason Flyer is doing. And the 60 footers are already gone online. So the first of the 4 60 footers is due for June 16th. And then the buses will come 2 to 3 buses every week until they all deliver. And then our next buses that we ordered for 25 will be going line entries so far in January with no delays at this point. But I'll fill in as we go on from there.
Okay, thank you for the follow-up from the chair. I know we did to the original amount, there were some increases, the original. Are there any expected, or is it locked in now that we don't expect any increases?
Through the chair, we're not expecting increases. The price is locked in. The updates to the budget were just reflecting that the 2025 budget last summer. We did know that price, but the 2024 one for prior didn't. So that's what this is reflecting, that update, but the prices are known. I mean, sometimes there's a few minor modifications if a couple items are changed, but no, that is a contracted price for these.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Commissioner.
Yeah, please don't. Random curiosity question, do they like flatbed these things here? Like, how do we receive delivery of them? They
Sure.
drive them from the line?
Through the chair, they built the bus in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
The bus has no drive line in it and no seating in it. It goes on a flatbed to Crookston. It has everything installed in Crookston, and then it drives Crookston, which is roughly 1,912 kilometers to assign every bill when it comes. And then it shows up here. It's a 2-day turnaround.
Other comments or questions? Or I call the question? Okay, so I would call the question then, all those in favor of the recommendation? So, great, okay. Back to Mr. Hurdy, we have workout here at the top of the agenda. Status of reserves and reserve funds, December 31st, 2024, staff report number 3.
Thank you. The report is a note file report that summarizes in fairly extensive detail the status of the reserve funds as of December 31st, 2024 for the commission. I think it's a fairly good synopsis and should hopefully speak for itself. The provisional estimates included throughout the report reflect the assumptions and values included in the 2025 recosting report in the operating side, as well as the 26 through 27 multi-year budgets. As the detail in the report indicates, all but the provincial gas tax reserve currently fall within the commission's administrative guidelines, with both the provincial gas tax and healthcare management reserve falling slightly below the guideline by the end of the multi-year budget reporting period. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
Okay, so first we need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Commissioner Coyle, seconded by Commissioner Root. Thank you very much. Okay, any questions for Mr. Greger? Being that I'm going to call the question, all those in favor to notify. Thanks. Okay, so on to staff report number 4, over to Ms. Flashy for the shelter program.
Thank you. So the report sets out the recommendations for the list of shelter locations going forward for the 2025 program. As indicated in the report, due to the ongoing construction projects that have happened in the city over the last while, we've had a number of locations where shelters have been removed and they will not go back. You know, due to road widening or whatever the case may be, those sites are no longer applicable. So we are able to install more shelters this year than what would be a traditional program, but we're looking to repurpose those shelters so that we can put them in other locations. So this list is tentative. This list has been shared with the city and it's still subject to site plan approval. So there could be the odd one that comes back, there may be an issue. And if it comes back that it's not an issue, obviously planning would just move down the list to whatever the next ideal option is. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder on the recommendation. Moved by Councilor Trudeau, seconded by Commissioner Collier. Okay, any comments or questions for this question? By the way, the new shelters are really cool.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but I
Rapid
can, I can see them like along Wellington when I'm walking to get my coffee and my macarons from, Happiness Cafe, they're super cool.
Yes, I did. Where do you actually, when they are this kind of, where they put, where they
We store them at our Wonderland facility,
Okay.
and Craig's very happy to be getting rid of them because they are moving away.
No, I can imagine.
We moved-
Quite a few of them.
We don't want vandalism, so we've moved them twice. So I always ask Katie, when are they gonna be installed? So, but there's nothing vandalized, they've all been good.
And none of these will be through the chair, sorry, none will be fitted with telemetry, like with their boards.
No,
No.
that program that included the wayside was an actual ISIP program. So it was a discrete number of that.
That was
of
driven.
basically, yes, that was a
Okay.
one time, and we basically selected, obviously, the busiest locations.
Other comments or questions before I call the question? Nope. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor on the resolution? Great. Okay, back to Ms. Flashney for this one. This is staff report number 5, the fair adjustment review.
Thank you through the chair. As promised, when the commission approved the January 1st, 2024 fare adjustment, we always, after a year, we always go back and have a look and see what the impacts have been. At a high level, what we've seen with respect to that specific fare adjustment is we saw a shift away from cash, which we did predict because you know, moving as we talked about it was an across the board in terms of percentage. But moving from that 2 coins to now 4 or 5, trying to, you know, people are just going to move away if they can. So that was anticipated. What we think has happened, because the ticket categories all increased, so we're assuming some of that was cash riders, but also some of it may have been pass riders because we saw a decline in city pass. So with respect to the city pass, though, what we think has happened, there was a decline in the city pass, but there was a significant increase in weekday pass. So again, it's all anticipated because riders will migrate to what the most affordable option is for what their needs are. So there was really nothing that happened out of this that we didn't anticipate. As the report indicated, we did hit our overall ridership and revenue projections. Unfortunately, that was due to the fact that we had higher than budgeted tuition pass ridership and revenue. If we take that piece out of the mix, we would have actually been $200,000 short, which indicates that fare increase did result in some ridership slippage. So we did see some, not huge, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, but we did see some. And I think as the report summarizes, what it clearly indicates is with the shifts that have occurred and those missed budget targets, our fares have reached a threshold that should we look at any type of fare increase in the short to medium term, there will definitely be ridership losses associated. So it's no longer we think the riders will absorb this. We're at a tipping point now where should we look at fare increases, we will project significant ridership loss to go with them. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so first we need to move right to secondary to the file, moved by Commissioner Collier, seconded by Commissioner Rin. Thank you. Okay, any discussion on this? Commissioner Rin?
Through the chair, I could say more of a statement. In my role, in my real life job, this is the greatest concern we hear from clients. And this is across the city at every NRC, my role at the Salvation Army. It's the cost of transportation. And it's not a reflection, it's not transit's too expensive for me. I have $20 and I've got to figure this out. So it's especially challenging for people who are having to make a decision between eating and buying a bus ticket. They're walking for hours to get to food banks and food programs and things. So I agree with you, Ms. Bletchley, that we are at a threshold. I would say we may even be tipping a little bit over. And there's no more room to give, especially when we cannot put the pressure on the customers who need us the most. And it's a real struggle. I can't put it in enough words that how challenging it is for people right now. People who never struggled or could make ends meet. It's just not happening now. So I do agree that we are at a threshold for sure.
Through the chair, I think, this is a really good example of elasticity, right, in terms of just, I mean, it's pretty textbook. I guess the one thing that we do actually have to also look at is sort of the value prop in terms of increased fare and melt from increased fare to on-time performance and just the challenges we actually have getting around the city, right? Where it's like, okay, if I'm throwing $3.50 into a fare box or I'm tapping on, but my ride is 40 minutes late, or the perception is it's taking me forever because of construction delays on Wellington or what have you. I also think that there's probably some melt that's actually due to that, where people have just said, you know what? I'm gonna, forgo my bus pass and actually drive around, right? And I think, we saw a little bit of that, with COVID, obviously, where people actually moved into cars because we didn't have bus service for a bit, and then those people retained their cars, right? And, unfortunately, once you've actually budgeted for that, generally you try to maintain that as a budget, right? So I think we've actually had two factors in play here with the elasticity, and then, again, just substitution coming up.
One thing, yeah, go ahead, no, I was,
Just through the chair, 100% agree. And we even see that in the voice of the customer surveys. So, the biggest priorities for customers are on-time performance and getting me where I need to go, when I need to go. Fares is still on that survey, and it's still a concern, but that bigger concern is that on-time performance. So again, you do see that both of those things have certainly had an impact.
Like a late bus, a bus connection is 25 minutes sometimes added to your trip, and it's like, okay, it's not worth me throwing $3.50 in repair box, right? Okay.
Councilor, do you have a comment before I pass my chair to Scott?
I do.
Okay.
I chair the question through the chair to the staff. Does CUDA, or do we do it on our own, various comparative analysis? For example, now we are talking about the fares with the other cities in Ontario, similar size. Is this provided, or will it be provided by CUDA, or do we do it ourselves? Can we?
Through the chair, so that CUDA does, like, part of the statistics that they publish every year include fares. So that is readily available. And when we came to the commission, back when the commission was approving that 2024 fare increase, we had comprehensive analysis comparing to like-size systems with respect to where our fares were and where they were potentially going. So we still are somewhat on par. I mean, it's difficult because the GTA systems, well, there might be systems there in size that are comparable to us. Once you hit that GTA, and now with the one fare program, everything is consistent. So it gets a little bit difficult to find true comparators because of that. But we do look at, whenever we're looking at a fare adjustment, we always do that comparison.
Thank you for, I do remember that, and I remember there was some municipality, I don't know if it was Windsor or someone, but they were planning to introduce it in September of last year. And I was just wondering now that it should be, when these statistics come from CUDA, it should be included, let's say municipalities, if they introduce the increase in the fall.
Right.
So we should be able to.
And when we include, like, we do the peer comparisons in our annual report, while we don't get into fares, one of the comparators that we look at is average fare, and that kind of gives you an indication of, where your fares are. We also compare the contributions to the operating expenditure. So we know that our operating expenditures are covered by transportation revenue, provincial gas tax, and operating revenue, and City of London funding. Those are your options. So we break those down in percentages and say, the City of London gives us X percent, and we compare that to other municipalities. The rider gives X percent, and we compare that. In those comparisons, our riders give the highest of our peer group, and the city gives the lowest of our peer group. That's been consistent over as many annual reports as I can remember, but that's the other way of looking at it. So you're not actually looking at, it's 375 versus 350. It's more at a higher level. What is that contribution to the overall operating expenditure?
Thank you. No more questions.
Okay, so Commissioner Root, then Commissioner Collier, then I will give you first. Okay, Commissioner Root.
Thank you through the chair. And perhaps Councilor Purple can answer this question. Does OW still give bus passes for people searching. Oh, sorry, they do not.
No, they provide a transportation amount that they allow them to choose whether, like, for transportation, but what we've heard anecdotally, again, goes to the comments that you made earlier, that those recipients are using that money to buy food, right? Like, where in the past, just for education purposes, years ago, recipients used to actually get a certificate for a bus pass, so they could bring it to LTC and actually get a bus pass that then they could use. That changed a number of years ago and it's never gone back. So they get they get a monthly allocation, but it's up to them how they utilize it.
Okay, so we can't really take that into consideration. And there's no accountability at OW to say, okay, we've got 8,000 people. Take the bus pass or, okay,
No, and my understanding is that was a provincial directive way back when the province was shifting the way they wanted to allocate those funds.
okay, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. Okay, I was just curious if that was had any effect on our figures.
Related, unrelated, fair media, just in terms of cost of collection, I mean, you know. You should probably guess, I'm a Toronto rider, TTC, and, you know, they are, carrying out subway tokens and.
Very sad.
Yeah, and, tickets, because of the back end cost of actually processing them, and I mean. Do we think that there's achievable cost savings with that? I mean, I know one of the challenges we have in terms of using the card is that we don't necessarily have a distribution network yet, right? And I'm just wondering, just given sort of, we're kind of looking for nickels and dimes in the couch cushions here. Is there an opportunity for us to work with partners to get that distribution up for the hard plastic so that we can actually look at fair migration and shedding some of those costs?
Certainly that's something that we're continuing to look at. We were kind of well on our way, probably pre-COVID, and then everything obviously kind of got off track. I mean, the biggest cost of processing is cash.
Yeah.
Tickets essentially are brought back here and shredded, so that there's not a big, obviously the fare boxes have to be emptied, but there's not a significant, obviously the preparation of the tickets, the printing of them. One of the things that we have to get our heads around is how we deal with the agencies that give out tickets. You know, they give people 2 tickets to go, you know, if they're going to a job or wherever they're going. If tickets go away, we have to have something that will work. We have seen some solutions in some other agencies, and it's basically a disposable smart card.
Paper version of.
Right,
that,
but
right?
the problem is that's not cheap because there's a computer
They-
chip
they
in it,
are.
right? So now what I'm saying is those costs that you would save in printing this are probably going to go to that type of media.
Okay.
So the other piece that we're certainly looking at is because we do have to replace all of the onboard validators on the fleet just because they're at end of life. And we certainly have indicated to the vendor that we want that ability to look at doing, you know, debit, credit, tapping, that kind of thing.
Sorry, to interrupt, that's the 2.5 million placeholder that we've got.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's the other piece so we kind of need to look at everything in conjunction and then look at moving forward. But obviously the desire is to get away from those paper tickets and move more people. As the report indicated, we've got about 25% of our riders are actually using stored value.
Yeah.
And obviously we'd like to see that, you know, we would like to see that increase.
Hold on.
You asked my question.
Did I?
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor to adopt on file. Over to Mr. Wilson, this is staff report number 6, specialized service scheduling system update.
Through the chair, staff report number 6 speaks to a quick update of where we're at with the specialized service scheduling implementation, scheduling system implementation. Phase 1 has gone well. We are nearing the point where we'll be moving into customer care and out of the production part of installing it. We're working through some of the parameter stuff to continue to improve the efficiencies with respect to time on bus and time picked up. I can boast again that for the last 10 days, Monday to Friday, we're still carrying over 1,100 people a day, which is fantastic. Checked last week's on-time performance for the entire week. picked up within 15 minutes of the scheduled book time was about 80.8%, which is really good. Noting that policy states we could be up to a half an hour late, so that's nice. With respect to phase 2 implementation in the portal, Carolyn and their staff have done a fantastic job preparing the documentation that's going to go out to the group with respect to teaching people how to use the portal, and we are very near to the time when we can send it out and start moving through the process of getting people brought up to speed how to use it. We are going to use an alphabetical approach slowly at first to ensure that we have the internal resources to manage any questions and to help people out. But I'm expecting it to be something that's very well received. As the test group returned little to nothing with respect to concerns, and they love the way that it looks, seeing the trips, managing the trips. So I would expect that that will continue. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. So we need a mover and a seconder to note and file, moved by Commissioner Root, seconded by Commissioner. Any discussion?
Sure, Chair, question. I just want to receive some feedback. This is the test group. Uh, Positive feedback, the individuals that made up the test group, how they actually even selected, and I'm just curious about how did it all go?
Through the chair, 2 pieces to that. So we selected a broad range of people that use the service, some of which used it a lot of the time, and some that didn't use it that often, some that were just subscription trip booked people, and some that called in and booked all the time, as well as we used people that were pretty savvy with the Amble app, the former app to manage trips. And we included a person from our AppSec committee as well, somebody with some visual impairment, so that we could have that eye on it as well, to have an idea of what was happening there. As far as feedback, loved how easy it was to book trips, how simple it was to put them in. The system stores all trips that they've added so they can redo the next trip for the next day. They like that they could see all of their trips that are booked ahead of time, as well as the ones in the past, and they can cancel immediately. And I can share that when the trip is requested online, it immediately hits our system internally. There is no lag. And when there's a cancellation, it immediately pops out and the system starts to work right away to try and find an alternative solution for trips that aren't currently booked. So the feedback's been fantastic.
Glad to hear that. Thank you. No more questions.
Very cool. I like that feature. Commissioner Claire.
Through the chair, in terms of Orla to the broader population, you said you're in a phase now. How long do you expect that to take?
So through the chair, as stated in the report, not entirely sure how many people are going to jump on it. So I think a lot of it's gonna come down to how many people are interested, because we're gonna have to go through a training process to help people. Sitting just shy of 9,000 registrants now. I wouldn't want to estimate that. I think that once we start with the initial rollout in blocks, we'll have an idea percentage wise of how many people will jump on it. I'll be able to give an update on that, in the coming months, but I wouldn't want to estimate the exact time, just because I don't.
Right. So, you don't know what you don't know. Do we have a target in terms of is there a industry target in terms of what the adoption would be of this? Because we hear everybody wants it, but in reality, how many people actually are going to do it versus just use the queue, because that's what they've always done.
So through the chair, I don't want to speak to industry target because I don't know that either. I will say that CUDA last year spent an awful lot of time in sessions, and I would suggest our peers that have had this stuff in place for the last couple of years, including the folks out west, they were talking at that 10% range after the first 2 years. So I would like to think that that number is going to continue to grow as I think the population itself gets more savvy with technology.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Thank you for some questions.
Seeing none, I am going to call the questions. And those in favor to note and file. Okay, last staff report. This is over to Mr. Butler. Should I make the joke I want to make about it? The 2025 road construction update.
Thank you. And through the chair, staff report number 7 is our latest update for you, the ongoing construction happening throughout the city. Not a lot of significant changes from our last meeting in February, but a few notes to pass along. We are continuing to monitor the ongoing installation of the rapid transit stations along King Street and the downtown loop now are happening. We are on track, we need to commence use of King Street contraflow westbound lane that we talked about in the last meeting for the end of April on the Route 94 buses. We have completed our internal operator training for that. And I also know the city set out doing some enforcement and education with some bylaw officers along there too in the recent weeks, so that's helpful as well. Wellington Gateway projects will have their work resume March 31st. That's going to result in some lane reductions and ultimately some stop closures that will impact service along Wellington. East London Link Phase 4, work resumed on March 17th between Highbury and Second Ave. So that will ultimately have some stop impacts as work moves to the northbound side of Oxford. We are working with Fanshawe for the short-term solutions. Bigger impact, but that will be in the summer months, which so won't be as impactful with students on campus. And as discussed at our last meeting, do the detour for the Dundas and Waterloo intersection closure wrapped up and service resumed for normal routing on March 13th. And those are the highlights for you. If there are any questions after.
First I need a mover and a second, by Commissioner Clay, seconded by Councilor Cribble. Any comments or questions?
Thank you, Sir David. You mentioned that it was beneficial, the training of the bylaw officers. Can you please tell me more about it?
No, sorry. So if I wasn't clear, so through the chair, our training was for our operators on how they're to use the contraflow lane on King Street. I noted that city bylaw officers have been out doing some actually enforcement near Beale Secondary School with some of the parents dropping the kids off there and even some other vehicles that were using the lane that are prohibited from using the lane. So they were doing some enforcement, and also by doing that, they're educating. And I know Beale has sent out communications to their parents through the students and whatnot as well.
Okay,
If that clarifies that.
it does. Thank you. Nice. One more follow-up. The Friday meetings, is the city still happening and communication is there in terms of the updates? It's working well?
Yeah, Ms. Burns participates in those meetings every week. Continues to do that. It gets the updates from the city.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, then I see Commissioner.
Through the chair, summer's coming up. This is something I've been thinking about for a couple of years, especially after we did the fare increase. Summertime, construction is crazy, temperatures are hot, everyone is stressed. We have, what, 30% of people using bus tickets, approximately? I've just gone for that chart. With an 18% increase in people using tickets, which means that 18% more people who are gonna be under stress if they have a 90-minute transfer and they've been sitting on the bus for an hour because they're stuck somewhere. What I want to get staff's thoughts on what it would look like if we did a campaign from June to July that just increased transfers to 2 hours. It's not a huge increase, but it's enough for someone to look at it and say, okay, I might not be as stressed because I know I've got another hour. I understand there's financial implications and I understand that we're in a deficit. But I also think for those 2 months that some goodwill and a little ease of stress would be beneficial for our passengers and also for our operators too. So I'm interested to hear what the thoughts would be.
Certainly not a bad idea. In terms of cost, obviously there would be potential lost revenue, but in addition to that, that would be a programming change that we'd have to make to the smart card system because transfers are automatically loaded for those that are using,
The stored value.
right. And I have no idea what that would cost. So that would be something that the commission would want to be aware of before they would move forward with that. Certainly a question that we can ask, but that's a fairly significant, I think, change in their back end, the way things work. And I'm just saying that cautionary, that number that comes back may be big, but it's certainly something we can look into.
So Commissioner Ridge, would you like to perhaps make a motion on the floor directing a report to investigate the costing of extending the transfers to 2 hours for the months of July and August?
July and August. So for extending the transfers for tickets and for stored value smart cards.
And cash.
And cash.
To 2
And
hours.
to those to 2 hours.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
For June and July.
For June and July, or June and July, or July?
July and August.
July and
We,
August.
well, yeah, July and August, the hottest
Yeah.
when everyone's done school.
Students be okay. Okay, I'll second that motion. Is there any discussion? Any friendly comments, Commissioner? Yes.
Just one question, actually, for clarification, how much, I know with the card, like
Yeah.
it's time stamped with the card, right? So there's no flexibility there. How much operator flexibility do we have in terms of like, or some like
I mean,
transfer?
yes, I mean, I think generally, and I mean, David can probably speak to it better in terms of the instructions that we provide operators, but I think they also would show grace depending on, but go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, through the chair. So, yeah, it's a 90-minute window, but we also instruct our operators to do a rounding. So if it's like, if it's at, for instance, 5:30, rather than set it, if it's a little bit past 30, we're telling them to take it to 7:15. So do a little rounding, to err on the side of caution for the consumer. So we do that through our training process originally. And I think ultimately, everybody knows that our operators are also, part of our SOPs and training for the operators to be lenient with a slightly expired transfer until let them run.
Through the chair, and I understand that, and I don't think I've, in the last 20 years, have gotten a consistent transfer, because everyone kind of sets their own time, but I don't think the general public knows that. So if they're reaching into their pocket for another ticket, because they've seen their transfer is gonna expire in 5 minutes, they don't know, right? And most people, I don't think, wanna cause a fuss, and they don't wanna run the risk of having attention put on themselves. You're just gonna pay that ticket. I think it's a really great opportunity for us to say, you know what, we see you, we understand your stress. Here's what we're doing to help alleviate that.
Okay, if there's any further discussion on the motion, I'm prepared to call the question. Okay, all those in favor?
Thank you.
That's very welcome. That was a good motion. I think also too, in the summer months when it's like 900 degrees outside, I think this will be coming as well.
When all the windows aren't open on the buses and they will be fantastic.
Yeah, I think also too, yeah, that deals with some public health concerns as well, so. Commissioner Collier.
I'm actually doing another question. With respect.
Good, go ahead.
Through the chair, with respect to the bidirectional running on King Street, who is the lead for, sort of the consumer or driver education section required? Is that part of rapid transit implementation? Is that the city, or is it both? Or is it us?
Yeah, through the chair, I know Katie's had conversations with the city, and it is their responsibility for comms, for the motorists, for general traffic to get that out. Mentioned what Beal has done kind of internally because of the impact there. Our comms and stuff has been with our operators about the caution nutrition use, but it's the city. It's my understanding.
Do we know when that's coming? In terms of like that comms package? Because I mean, all of a sudden, the signage is going to go up overnight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carol just said April 7th.
So that's the cutover date. And when are we gonna?
No, we're cutting over at sign up, right?
Yeah,
So
28th of April.
28th of April.
Okay, so we've got
Couple
3 weeks. Okay.
That's my comments on that. How many accidents do you think is that gonna cause? Anyhow, that's my editorial comment for that. Any other comments, questions for Mr. Butler? Seeing none, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor to note and file. Great, okay, so that is our agenda. We have no in-camera items, and so we are on to the date of our next meeting, which will be April 30th, 2025 at 5 p.m. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner, seconded by Commissioner Collier. All those in favor? Great, thanks.